Hey guys, tonight we're heading back way back to ancient Egypt. Not the version with pyramids and pharaohs you see in textbooks, but something smellier. Imagine this, you're barefoot, the air is thick with the scent of warm mud and burning acacia wood. And your job? Yes, your actual job is to figure out how much ostrich fat you need to mix with frankincense to keep a dead noble from smelling like, well, a dead noble. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It helps me keep making these sleepy historical adventures. Also, if you're listening right now from anywhere, interesting your bedroom in Berlin, your hammock in Ho Chi Minh, your couch in Kansas, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love knowing where you're falling asleep from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. It begins with a river. You're crouched on the banks of the Nile. The water moves like syrup at this hour, slow and heavy, reflecting the faint gold of a waking sun. You can hear ibises chattering and frogs gurgling from the reeds. And somewhere not too far away, a pair of hippos are having what sounds like an argument in a language made entirely of bubbles and snorts. The ground is still cool beneath your toes. You shift slightly to avoid a beetle rolling a perfectly round ball of dung. Because of course. Welcome to ancient Egypt. You're a commoner, well, a slightly elevated one, because you've just been apprenticed to a scent master in Thebes. Your mother cried with joy when the letter arrived sealed with a dab of rose wax. They only pick 20 a year, she said. You'll smell like gods. You're not sure that's a compliment, but it beats hauling bricks for pyramid tombs. From your tiny mud brick home, you begin the long walk to the temple district. The sun rises with embarrassing confidence. The moment it clears the horizon, it seems to decide that subtlety isn't its thing and slams down full heat. Your linen tunic clings to your back. You wave at a passing priest in a leopard skin shawl. He doesn't wave back, but you weren't really expecting him to. He's busy mumbling to a hawk. The scent master's compound is tucked behind the temple of Khonsu. You've only been there once for a sniff test. You were blindfolded and made to identify 12 ingredients from crushed petals and resins. You got 10 right. The scent master said your nose was decent. Your cousin said that's the highest praise he's ever heard from a man whose face looks like it's been carved by wind. You round the corner and approach the compound gates. 2 enormous statues of the lion-headed goddess Sekhmet loom above, and you get the sense she's judging your posture. You stand straighter. A boy, not much older than you, opens the gate. His eyes are rimmed with kohl, and his hands smell like beeswax. You're late, he says, though it's not even dawn. You mumble something about hippos. He doesn't laugh. Inside, the scent master's garden is waking up. Henna blossoms sway beside tall stalks of papyrus. Small clay jars sit in rows on heated stones, steaming gently like sleepy kettles. You inhale, and there it is, a smell you can't quite place. Sweet, but smoky. Floral, but sharp. Like a jasmine bush trying to impersonate fire. Later, you'll learn it's blue lotus, mixed with powdered amber. For now, it just smells like mystery. The scent master himself emerges from a shaded alcove. He wears a white linen robe cinched with braided leather and no shoes. His feet are stained from walking through sandalwood mulch. His hair is oiled and twisted with lapis pins. He looks at you like a bird judging whether you're worm-worthy. You'll trudge, he says, not looking directly at you. You'll carry, you'll melt, and you'll watch fat until it sings. You wait for him to explain what that means. He doesn't. Instead, he hands you a bronze spatula, flat, thin, warm from the fire. This is your voice, he says. Don't let it scrape. He turns and walks off. You follow. The compound workshop is a shaded space filled with shallow basins, bundles of dried herbs, carved soapstone mortars, and an entire wall of small wooden drawers labeled with hieroglyphs. Your job for the first week is to memorize those labels. There are 34 different types of animal grease alone. Crocodile fat used for wound balms. Goose fat excellent for cooling blends. Ibex tallow, which no one likes but the priests keep insisting is sacred. And ostrich fat, surprisingly rare, difficult to harvest, but prized for perfume bases because of its uncanny ability to absorb floral oils without overwhelming them. You're handed a lump of ostrich fat the size of your fist. It's waxy pale, slightly grainy, and frankly smells a little like old sandals. But once rendered melted down carefully over charcoal with a pinch of natron to purify it, it becomes nearly scentless, the perfect carrier for oils and resins. A master blender nearby taps a reed stylus against the side of his basin. Don't let it boil, he warns. If it bubbles, it dies. You nod, though you're mostly just trying not to drop the spatula into your own foot. By midday, your arms ache from stirring. You've broken 2 clay jugs, spilled marjoram into a fire pit, and accidentally insulted a priestess by handing her rose oil, meant for funerary rites. She didn't say anything. She just sneezed, blessed you, and walked away with terrifying serenity. At night, you collapse onto a reed mat in the apprentice quarters. You smell like myrrh, singed linen, and humble pie. A cat curls beside your hip, and you don't have the energy to move it. You stare up at the ceiling and let your mind drift. You wonder how long until you're allowed to invent your own blend. You wonder if anyone ever really figures out how much ostrich fat is too much. And you wonder if Teppy, the scent master, ever smiles. Spoiler, he doesn't. But you will, eventually. You're up before the sun the next morning. Not because you're eager, but because the scent of burning figwood and a mild panic dream involving exploding perfume jars have dragged you out of sleep like a cat dragging a half-dead lizard. The compound is already humming. A line of apprentices is being lectured by one of the senior mixers, a woman named Denise, who speaks like a scribe and smells like sandalwood dipped in vinegar. She points at you with a pestle. New one. Grease list. Go. You blink. All 34. A nod. You start rattling them off in order: ostrich, goose, hippo, crocodile, ibex, desert hare. You only make it to number 16 before she frowns, waves her hand dismissively, and returns to her basin. Apparently this is normal. Today, you begin your official apprenticeship, which mostly consists of being sent back and forth between the grease room and the herb storeroom, carrying oddly heavy jars of rendered fat and learning which plants to never ever sniff directly. Spoiler mint of any kind is deceptively aggressive. The grease room is a quiet, waxy-smelling chamber lined with amphorae. Each is labeled with a tiny painted ostrich feather, or fish, or curled snake, depending on its contents. A large oil stone dominates the center of the room, where the senior mixer Teppy is already working, silently melting chunks of ostrich fat in a double-walled clay basin. Come, that's all he says. You trudge over trying to look confident while holding a small bowl of goat marrow, which is apparently used for ointments meant for sore joints and confusingly dreams. Watch. He drops a pinch of natron into the pot. The fat foams, then settles into a gentle shimmer. It reminds you of hot milk, if hot milk ever smelled like regret and poultry. Teppy lifts the spatula and tilts the basin. The fat swirls without a ripple. It sings, he says, gesturing to the pot. You strain your ears. There is no singing, just the soft sputter of distant boiling. But you nod anyway. Because what else can you do? The process of rendering ostrich fat, as you learn over the next few days, is part science, part mystery, and part superstition. Too much heat, and it turns acrid. Too little, and it remains grainy. Stir too quickly, and the fat separates. Stir too slowly, and it develops what they call a sour face, a term that's never fully explained, but involves considerable eyebrow raising. Some apprentices swear by adding powdered lotus stamen to stabilize the mix. Others whisper that a single drop of fig sap improves texture. Teppy. He just scowls and mutters something about patience being more fragrant than haste. By the 3rd week, you're finally trusted with your own rendering station. A squat pot, 3 small bowls, and 1 very unforgiving candle flame. Your hands are blistered, your tunic sleeves are permanently stained, and you've developed a 6th sense for when a batch is about to turn, which earns you a rare eyebrow lift from Denise high praise in these parts. At midday, you're given a new task inventory, the scent library. It's a long corridor lined with amphorae and sealed scrolls. Some contain powdered herbs. Others are filled with oils that haven't been opened in decades. You open one cautiously. It's filled with a substance that smells like citrus honey and fear. You close it very, very carefully. A small papyrus scroll flutters out of a shelf. It's a recipe written in the hand of a long-dead master. The ingredients include ostrich fat, blue lotus oil, powdered honeycomb, and a breeze from the western wall at dusk. You read it 3 times to make sure. It's definitely what it says. You're still trying to figure out how one bottles a breeze when a shout echoes from the courtyard. Hippos. You rush outside. A noble's boat has been overturned just down the riverbank, and 2 hippos, massive grunting beasts, are wallowing in what used to be a ceremonial papyrus garden. A priest is yelling something about omens. Teppy, unbothered, hands you a basin of half-rendered ostrich fat and says calmly, "Don't let it burn." Back to reality. The rest of the day passes in a sort of greasy blur. You stir. You hum because why not? You drop a ladle once and wince as Teppy slowly turns to stare at you without blinking. You're beginning to understand the rhythm of this place. It's not fast. It's not loud. It doesn't reward brilliance or ambition. It rewards those who can wait. Those who can smell something ordinary and know how it will age after a week, sealed in beeswax. It's a slow kind of magic. And one night, after a long session of lotus petal grinding, you finally ask the question that's been burning in your nose. Why ostrich fat? Denise doesn't even look up from her pestle. Because crocodile fat stinks. Fair enough. The next morning arrives with the smell of scorched papyrus and overripe figs. You wake up already sore, your arms vaguely protesting every remembered motion from the day before. At some point in the night, someone's cat has draped itself across your chest, like a particularly judgmental scarf. You let it stay. Today is your first full day inside the temple. Not for worship, not for prayer, not even for funerary prep. You're going to sniff things. The temple of Khonsu looms above the city like a sandstone ship grounded in time. It is a sacred place, yes, but also a practical one. And what most visitors don't realize is that many of the offerings to the gods stink. Not metaphorically. Literally. You follow Teppy down a side corridor, away from the central altar, past a trio of stone-faced guards, who smell like leather dust, and faintly of goat. Through a small wooden door is the real heart of your journey, the scent chamber. It's less majestic than you expected. More smoky, cupboard, less divine sanctum. But the air is thick, thick with centuries of crushed petals, cooled. Incense, dried citrus, and something sharp and metallic like heated bronze. You sneeze immediately. "Begin," Teppy says, and gestures at the rows of oil dishes in front of you. There are dozens of them, tiny bronze saucers arranged neatly on shelves, each with a carefully placed drop of fragrant oil. Every one of them is an offering to a deity. Some smell like heaven. Some smell like despair in a jar. You bend to inhale a dish labeled for Hathor, Protector of Joy. It smells like fermented grapes, sandalwood, and possibly dried apricots that were left out too long. Next to it is one for Sobek. It smells like river clay, and something you can only describe as slightly menacing cucumber. One labeled for Ptah nearly makes you faint. It's pure onion oil aged in crocodile bladder. You gag. Teppy chuckles for the first time. "Gods do not care for comfort," he says. "Only truth." You're beginning to suspect the gods have a very strange idea of what truth smells like. Further down the row is an unlabeled dish. Teppy pauses before it leans in slowly and inhales with the reverence of someone listening to the opening notes of a favorite hymn. You try it too. It smells cool, fresh, like mint carried on the breeze, anchored by something woody and warm, underneath perhaps cedar. There's a slight sharpness too, like dried citrus peel. You close your eyes and for a moment you could swear you're standing beside the Nile at dawn again. This, Teppy says, is balance. The old ones called it new. No perfume can work without it. You file that away for later, right next to never inhale Ptah's oil. You help prepare some of the new offerings. It's a strange ritual. You mix the ingredients with your bronze spatula, always clockwise, and whisper the scent's name 3 times as you pour it. No one tells you what happens if you get the name wrong, but the last apprentice who did hasn't been seen in days. You assist with bottling new samples. These aren't meant for public sale. These are temple-grade oils sealed in tiny alabaster vials and tucked behind statues of gods where only the priests and perhaps the divine ever smell them. Some blends are designed to be burned, others to be buried. One, you're told, is never to be opened, just carried, so the smell stays pure in the next world. In the afternoon, a priestess arrives with a scroll and a frown. A noblewoman has sent a complaint her offering blend hasn't been replaced in over a week, and she claims it's gone sour. Tepi mutters something about spoiled noses and assigns you the task of reblending it. The ingredients: ostrich fat, lotus oil, a splash of mulberry resin, and 2 drops of saffron tincture. It's your first commissioned recreation. You work slowly, carefully. You heat the fat until it shimmers. You fold in the oils as gently as prayer. You whisper the name of the blend Saraset, which means to soften, 3 times. Then you test it on a small papyrus strip. It smells gentle, like a dream unrolling under your skin. You're surprised by how well it works. Even Tepi nods. Acceptable, he says, which might as well be a standing ovation. Later that night, as you walk home through the narrow alleys of Thebes, the smell still lingers in your nose. You pass others heading the opposite way, priests, merchants, beggars, all carried by the same moonlight, all surrounded by different clouds of scent. The woman beside you reeks of garlic and joy. The man behind you smells of sweat, fig wine, and ambition. And you smell like ostrich fat lotus dreams and temple-grade patience. Not a bad way to end the day. You don't see Tepi at first. You only hear his voice sharp as a reed blade, and somehow always arriving just a moment before you expect it. Your hand is too fast. Fat bruises when stirred with ego. You blink sleep from your eyes, still reeling from your morning assignment, measuring out precise drams of goose grease using a balance scale older than most pyramids. Again, you sigh. This is the 3rd time you've been told to remake a single infusion. It's not the scent that's the problem. It's the weight, the texture, the way the fat feels when folded over powdered resin. A whisper too thick, and it won't blend properly with flower oils. Too thin, and it turns chalky in heat. Tepi watches without blinking. You stir slower. You exhale. You reach for the new jar of ostrich fat he placed in front of you earlier, its pale color almost like desert milk. You pause to examine it more closely. Where did this come from, you ask? Tepi nods toward the compound wall. Desert hunt. The prince's party, 2 days north. And just like that, you're thrown into the world of ostrich chasing before the fat, before the rendering, before the recipe scrolls written in cinnamon ink. It all starts with the hunt. Later that day, you're summoned from your station. A visiting noble has requested that one of the apprentices accompany the royal hunting party on their next expedition to observe fat at the source, as Tepi dryly puts it. Somehow your name is chosen. You've barely packed a jar of salt and a travel robe before you're being loaded onto a creaking donkey cart beside 3 smug guards who smell like cedar and overconfidence. The desert greets you like a slap to the face. Dry wind, sharp sun, and sand in places you didn't know could hold sand. You travel north into the Badlands where acacia thins and heat blooms. On the 3rd morning, the lead hunter whistles softly and points ahead. There, an ostrich. It's absurdly tall. Gangly legs, puffed plumage, an expression of perpetual skepticism. You marvel at how gracefully ridiculous it is. Then it sprints. You blink, and it's already halfway across the plain. The noble yells something unintelligible, and his party gives chase. You're left behind with a junior handler and a bucket of bait-dried figs, which apparently works sometimes. You doubt the ostrich is in the mood for figs. Eventually, the party returns with 2 birds captured unharmed, but clearly indignant. The birds are led back to camp where handlers begin the careful process of harvesting fat from older stock already stored in shaded jars. You watch closely. The fat is collected from around the lower breast and flanks stored immediately in clay containers lined with linen soaked in natron. It must be chilled even out here, or it begins to rot within hours. The head handler, a grizzled man missing 3 fingers, and most of his patience, gives you a quick tutorial. This fat, he says, holding a waxy lump between thumb and forefinger, absorbs scent better than goosebines, tighter than goat, and doesn't talk back like crocodile. You ask why ostrich of all creatures. He laughs, because hippos bite. Not helpful, but fair. By the 5th day, your nose has adjusted to the living, breathing source of your work. The smell of fresh ostrich fat isn't unpleasant. It's earthy, slightly nutty, with a faint, wild musk that somehow refuses to cling after rendering. It's not the smell itself that's valuable, but its neutrality. It carries other scents without muting them. The desert heat makes you dream vividly. One night, you dream of Tepi standing over a boiling pot of fat, chanting something in a language you don't know. The scent that rises is like blue smoke and lilies. He turns to you and says, "Don't stir clockwise." You wake up sweating. Your hands smell like sand and resin. The return journey is slower, but you carry new respect for the material you once took for granted. The ostrich, awkward and comedic as it is, has become your silent partner in scent. When you arrive back at the compound, Teppy inspects your face, then your hands, then your pack. "Still have your eyebrows? Good. Come." He leads you to the rendering room. There you will melt your first fresh batch of ostrich fat. Teppy watches as you light the brazier. The clay basin warms. The waxy chunks begin to soften. You stir slowly, carefully folding the melting fat like dough, letting it sigh into itself. It glistens, not a bubble in sight. Now Teppy murmurs, "Let it sing," and for the first time, you think you actually hear it. Not a song exactly, more like a hum. A kind of quiet harmony in the movement of the mixture, the balance of warmth and stillness, the dance of fat and flame. A lullaby in chemistry. You smile, just a little. Teppy notices, doesn't say a word. The next morning, you're given a new assignment. Teppy doesn't say anything. He just points to a small strip of parchment that reads, "Escort required. Quarry Road. Ostrich convoy due at second light." You glance up. "We're importing fat now." He raises one eyebrow, his version of shouting, and turns away. You set off down the eastern path that winds out of Thebes, flanked by low stone walls and swaying reeds. The road to the quarry is a strange one. It's used for moving both temple stones and temple secrets. Today, it will carry barrels of fat tucked into wagons shaded with linen canopies to keep the sun from curdling the cargo. Halfway down the path, you see them 3 carts pulled by oxen, each stacked with sealed jars, marked with the familiar feather glyph for Nisu Ostrich. But it's not the carts that hold your attention. It's the person leading them. A tall man in desert leathers, his skin the color of sun-cooked papyrus, with a scar across his left cheek, and the kind of eyes that say, "I once negotiated trade with bandits and lived." He introduces himself as Kabet the fat broker. You try not to laugh. "You think the gods make their perfumes alone," he says dryly. "Someone's got to catch the smell first." Kabet is full of strange stories. He tells you about a desert village where they extract oil from wild dates by wrapping them in linen and sleeping on them for 3 nights. It works, he says, but you dream of sticky things. He also tells you something that Styx fat remembers the life it lived. You blink. What does that mean? It means crocodile fat will always smell like fear. Goat fat grumpy. Ostrich. Ostrich fat smells like running. You file that away, unsure whether it's metaphor madness or genius. Back at the compound, you help unload the jars into the shaded rendering room. This batch is different. The fat has already been strained, sealed in wax-coated pots, and labeled by grade soft edge long cling sunbound. Denit teaches you how to test each one. The soft edge melts almost instantly on the tongue of the flame. It's good for volatile oils like mint or lemon balm. The long cling holds onto flower oils for days and is used in perfumes designed to survive banquets and funerals alike. The most precious kind, sunbound, is what you're allowed to test last. It melts with a sigh. You mix it with a single drop of blue lotus and a hint of dried myrrh. The scent that rises is still, not floral, not sweet, just calm. You don't even realize you're smiling until Denit quietly nods beside you. "You'll be mixing royal blends soon," she says. You don't believe her. But a week later, you're summoned to the outer compound by an official whose tunic is too clean, and whose sandals haven't touched sand in days. "The nose is coming," he announces. Everyone stops moving. The nose. You'd heard whispers. Every generation, the pharaoh appoints one person a smell-keeper with a divine sense of scent. This person can detect if a blend is off by 1 drop. Some say they can smell dishonesty. Others say they're trained from birth to smell like gods and nothing else. The nose arrives just after midday. She's younger than you expected. Perhaps 17. Thin as papyrus eyes, like polished carnelian. She wears no makeup, no jewelry. Just a single strip of white cloth around her head, soaked Teppy whispers, with a perfume so rare it can only be stored in moonlight. She doesn't speak. She only gestures. One apprentice after another presents their blends. She sniffs. She frowns. She moves on. You present your own. It's a cautious mix, ostrich fat, crushed hibiscus clove, and 2 flakes of dried orange peel. She pauses, breathes in, then again. You hold your breath. She says nothing, but she moves on, and Denit squeezes your elbow. That evening you sit beside the garden basin and try to replay the day. You remember Cabet's words, fat remembers the life it lived. You wonder what your blend told her, what story it carried, whether it reminded her of something she's never told anyone, or maybe it just didn't stink. You lean back and stare at the sky. A single nightbird croaks in the distance. The scent of sandalwood drifts from the rendering room. Your fingers smell like citrus and fat. And for the first time you think maybe your nose is decent. The rendering room is hot, not just summer in Thebes hot, but the kind of concentrated warmth that seems to melt time itself. You've been in here for hours. Your face is slick, your hands are sticky, and your robe has soaked through in 3 different places. You no longer sweat, you ooze. But your ostrich fat is just beginning to melt. Teppy peers over your shoulder like a falcon evaluating its prey. If it's not clear as moonlight, it's not ready. You squint into the basin. The surface is cloudy pale, scattered with thin bubbles. Moonlight it is not. You sigh and adjust the flame. This is the part of the craft most people don't write poems about. No incense smoke, no delicate perfumes, no whispers to the gods. Just slow, steady heat. A pot, a paddle, and patience. The fat must render completely, slowly, without rush or interruption. Any shortcuts and you risk impurities, foul smells, poor absorption. A blend that crumbles under heat or age. Denise once described it as training a shy animal to come close without spooking it. You didn't get it then. Now you do. You're not cooking. You're coaxing. As it liquefies, the fat changes color from opaque ivory to a faint golden clarity, like sunlit honey water. It loses its smell, its texture, its memory. It becomes the canvas upon which every future scent will be painted. You stir it gently with your bronze spatula. No scraping, just smooth, quiet spirals. And then it happens. The shimmer. The way the fat glides across itself, no drag, no cling. A silent, almost imperceptible shift, like a breath being held. You look up at Teppy. He nods once. It sings. You smile, not daring to say anything, not wanting to jinx the moment. Carefully, you lift the basin from the flame and begin the next step, straining. You pour the hot fat through layers of linen stretched over a clay bowl, catching any stray fragments. Gristle grain ghost. It cools slightly as it filters, taking on a soft gleam. You add a pinch of natron whisper, the blend's name twice, never 3 times, not unless you're sealing it, and seal it in a beeswax-lined jar. This jar won't be used yet. It will age, mature as Teppy calls it, like wine, like priests, like grudges. You place it on the shelf beside dozens of others, each labeled with a glyph indicating its type, age, intended use. Now Teppy says the infusion. He walks you over to a smaller basin, where a lump of myrrh the size of your fist rests beside a pile of dried lotus petals. Warm fat, powdered resin, folds slow. You nod. Your heart beats faster. This is the part everyone dreams of the scent making. You warm a fresh spoonful of the rendered fat. You grind the myrrh with deliberate pressure, listening to it crackle like brittle bark. The lotus petals are crumbled by hand-soft, dry whisper light. They float like paper into the mix. You stir, and again that hush falls over the room. Not literal silence. There are always temple bells, distant bird calls, footsteps echoing through stone halls. But the air between sounds thickens, slows, as if the ingredients themselves are holding their breath to see what you'll make. You dip a papyrus strip, let it cool, then lift it to your nose. It smells like dusk. That's the only word you can find. Dry air, warm stone, a hint of sweetness at the edge of memory, something that makes your shoulders unclench without knowing why. Again, Teppy says. You do it again, and again. Each time with subtle adjustments, less lotus, more resin. A new drop of cinnamon oil. One batch burns. One batch sours. One is so pungent it makes Denise sneeze from 3 rooms away. You keep going. By the end of the week, you've made 7 acceptable blends. 3 good ones. One that Teppy actually says, over which might be the equivalent of a public standing ovation. He gives you a small bronze seal. Your mark. From now on, jars you infuse will carry it. It looks like a little bird with its head cocked sideways. Somehow it suits you. That night, you sit alone in the garden. You crush a mint leaf between your fingers. It smells like brightness and mischief. You think of Cabet's words again, fat remembers the life it lived. And you realize you're beginning to remember too. Not just how to make scent, but how to feel it, how to chase it, how to listen to what a smell is trying to say. Your life now moves in spirals, stirrings, infusions, cycles of melt and bloom. You walk past the scent jars like they're old friends. You nod to the oils, whisper to the basins. And when you lift the lid off a new jar of ostrich fat, you swear just for a second you hear the first note of a song. You wake up to the scent of burning cedar and someone arguing with a goose. Not metaphorically, a literal goose is hissing at a boy with a scroll. Apparently, deliveries are behind, and the compound's order of powdered spikenard has been misrouted to a brewer's house where it was mistaken for tea. Teppy is not pleased. But you're not on goose duty today. Today you meet the resin. The scentmaster's most prized blends, those reserved for temple rituals embalming, or rare royal commissions, always include one sacred ingredient, myrrh. Myrrh is what gives a blend its anchor, its whisper of mystery, its weight. Without it, a perfume can smell nice. But with it, it smells eternal. You follow Denise into the storeroom behind the herb walls. She unlocks a narrow wooden cabinet. Inside, 6 small linen-wrapped bundles, each the size of a clenched fist. She unties one gently. You lean in. It smells like secrets kept warm. Rough, amber-like granules glint under the torchlight brown-red gold, each bead like it could tell a story if given a tongue. You will grind today, Denise says simply. The mortar and pestle are heavier than you remember. Probably psychological. Grinding myrrh isn't just about pressure, it's about rhythm. If you press too hard, the resin gums up. Too soft, and you get shards. The goal is dust. Fine, dry, sun-colored dust that clings to the fingers and clogs your breath with desert dreams. You begin slowly. Each motion releases more scent, warm, sharp, slightly bitter, with a sweet, tarry edge. Like dried fruit and firewood had an argument and decided to merge souls. Hours pass. You lose yourself in the spiral press circle lift. Press circle lift. By midday, your arms ache, but you have a bowl of myrrh dust fine enough to float on the air. Teppy appears, says nothing, nods once, then he hands you a scroll. It's brittle, ancient, the ink flaking. At the top, receptive blend for the shadowed path. Beneath a list, ostrich, fat, long cling, powdered myrrh, blue lotus oil, drop of labdanum, pinch of crushed date seed, whispered name of the departed. You blink. What does that mean? Denise answers without looking up. It's a scent for embalming, for memory. You make it when someone important dies. You read the recipe again. The measurements are vague. A thumb's length, a soft breeze 2 sighs. You're used to cryptic instructions by now, but this one reads like poetry carved during mourning. Still you begin. You warm the ostrich fat slowly, letting the clarity return. Add the powdered myrrh a pinch at a time. Fold in the blue lotus oil. Its sweetness hits the back of your nose like a quiet smile. Labdanum, thick and sticky, is the hardest to stir in. It clings like grief. Finally, the date seed. Toasted, then crushed. It adds a toasty bitterness, the kind of note that makes a perfume feel real. Then comes the final line, whispered name of the departed. You glance around. Teppy's watching. You clear your throat, lean over the blend, and say quietly, Nefera. You don't know why that name came. It just did. Maybe someone you saw once. Maybe a name the myrrh gave you. The scent blooms. You test it on linen. It smells like farewell, but without sorrow. Like someone you loved is leaving, but will never be gone. Teppy says nothing. But later you find the blend has been sealed and added to the royal shelf. Your bronze seal is etched beside it. That night you wander down to the river. The moon reflects off the water like liquid alabaster. The reeds rustle. A crocodile glides past, uninterested. You hold a strip of linen under your nose, Nefera's blend. You breathe in, and the night softens. Everything feels slow, ancient, tender. A breeze passes, and for a moment it feels like someone says your name so softly, the myrrh has to carry it. It's late afternoon when Teppy summons you to the scroll room, a chamber you've passed 100 times but never entered. The door is thick, carved with falcon wings, and sealed with beeswax along the edges. You break the seal with a sense of quiet reverence and maybe just a little dread. This is where the recipes live, not the everyday scent notes scrawled on papyrus scraps, but the ancient ones. Blends said to have been whispered by gods, copied over centuries, tested only on royalty or mummies of significant charm. The room is cool, dustless, silent. The air smells like old ink and petrified lavender. On the central table sits a single scroll unrolled with care. It's wide, the reed fiber surface yellowed and cracked in places, but the ink is still bold, deep red edged with black outline hieroglyphs drawn with priestly precision. Each recipe starts with a name and a strange instruction. You read the first line aloud. Blend of the feathered moon for dreams untroubled and hearts eased. Denise appears behind you carrying a pot of fresh rendered ostrich fat. She sets it down and says, "You're ready." You've never felt less sure. The instructions are unlike anything you've seen. Along with ingredients, myrrh, dust, lotus oil, henna water, are phrases like 1 drop under starlight, twice stirred at the 3rd hour of raw, and sleep beside it, and it will remember. You glance at Denise. She shrugs. The gods like riddles. You begin anyway. The ostrich fat is perfect sunbound, aged 2 months. It glides across the bowl like oil over silk. You heat it gently, then begin the layering. First powdered henna blossoms, dried until crisp, then crushed between fingers and stirred in slowly. It turns the fat a pale blush. Next myrrh finely sifted just a pinch. Its scent is grounding, resinous, and warm, a whisper from beneath the earth. Then blue lotus oil, 2 drops. It dances through the mixture like light in water. The scent is instantly familiar, sweet aquatic, with a faint spice behind it, like cinnamon exhaled in a dream. The next ingredient, rosewater aged in copper, is strange. The recipe says to heat it first, then let it cool in a silver dish before adding to the blend in reverse spirals. You have no idea what a reverse spiral is, but you guess and hope. It emulsifies. Barely. Then the final step, the name. This time, it's not someone you know or think you know. The scroll provides it. Say the name of the blend Sanahet. You do. Softly. The mixture hums. The scent that rises is unlike anything you've ever created. It's not floral, not spicy, not clean. It smells like memory. Like the breath you didn't realize you were holding. Like the feeling when someone who once mattered touches your shoulder in a dream and says nothing. You pour it into a small alabaster jar. Seal it. Mark it with your bronze bird. And then you find yourself staring at the other recipes. The breath of the falcon. The veil of Amarna. Ra's third eye. Aroma for the bone of kings. Some of them are pure fantasy, surely. One calls for a scale from a fish who heard truth. Another for the scent left in linen after a deathbed promise. But Denise says quietly, these recipes were made before reason. When scent was still sorcery. That night you sleep with your jar of Sanahet beside you, and you dream. You dream of corridors lined with reeds, of birds that whisper in forgotten tongues, of the Nile winding backward, folding into itself like a ribbon of perfume, vanishing into your hands. You wake with a start nose filled with the last trace of lotus, and outside the dawn smells like something new. Death has a scent. You don't realize it until your 3rd time inside the embalming chamber. The first 2 times you were too overwhelmed to notice, too busy trying not to look directly at the cadavers, too distracted by the layers of protocol, the ever-present hum of priests chanting, while jackal masks stared with empty eyes. But now you smell it. Not rot that's long since been solved with natron and time. No, this is something older, deeper, a kind of hollow sweetness in the air, a mixture of aged cedar, bitter herbs, and a clinging hush like someone just whispered something sacred and closed the door behind them. You're here to assist with the scenting of a noblewoman named Timaat. She died last week wrapped in 85 yards of linen, her body treated by the royal morticians, her heart returned to her chest cavity after weighing. Your task is simple. Prepare the final scent to be applied before the inner wrappings. The closing perfume. You expected a recipe, a scroll, some guidelines. Instead, Tepi hands you a small wooden box and says, this was hers, her blend. Recreate it. You open the box. Inside, there's a scrap of linen stained dark with ancient oil, still faintly fragrant. A dab of amber. A trace of lotus. And something sharp. Tangy. Like preserved citrus, or was it something sour from age? You close your eyes and sniff again. This is not a blend, you know, so you reverse engineer it. First, you warm a small dish of ostrich fat aged 3 weeks already pre-cleared. It melts with a sigh like it knows what's coming. Then you test proportions 2 drops lotus, 1 of sweet myrrh, and a cautious bit of aged citron oil, the kind reserved for elite family rites. It's close, but not perfect. You try again, and again, 7 times. On the 8th, Denise enters the room. She pauses mid-step and says without turning, "That's it." The scent hangs in the air like a sigh held too long. You bring the final blend to the morticians. They nod, daub it onto the linen, and wrap Timaat's hands with practiced grace. You watch in silence. One priest murmurs, "May she smell sweet in the halls of Ma'at." You stay until the jar is sealed. On the way out, a young assistant asks, "Why perfume the dead?" You open your mouth. Close it. Then finally say, "Because forgetting smells worse than death." He doesn't laugh. Back at the compound, you find your own jar of the blend and mark it with your bird seal. You label it not with Timaat's name, but with the word Resahet, the remembered breath. That evening, Tepi invites you to the garden for the sunset sit. It's a quiet ritual only for senior mixers. You sit in a half circle. Each person carries a different blend. One for rest, one for clarity, one for letting go. When it's your turn, you uncork Resahet. The others breathe it in. No one speaks. But Denise lays a hand gently on your shoulder, a simple gesture. That night, sleep comes easily. Your room smells faintly of lotus and citron. The cat curls at your feet. Your hands still carry traces of ostrich fat. And in your dreams, you walk along the banks of the Nile beside a woman who never speaks but always smiles. You don't ask her name. You already know it. The first thing you notice is the silence. Not the comforting hush of mortar on stone, or the quiet drip of infused oils, but a dense, uncomfortable silence, the kind that makes you pause before entering the lab, unsure what you've walked into. You glance around. Tepi is standing perfectly still beside the long scent table, arms crossed. His face is unreadable, which is never a good sign. Denise hovers in the corner, visibly tense. Even the usually unflappable boy who stokes the resin braziers has gone suspiciously pale. On the center table rests a small alabaster jar lid, open, scent rising. And from the way everyone is staring at it, something has gone very, very wrong. You step closer. It smells wrong. Not bad exactly, but too much. Too forward. The kind of blend that lunges at your nose without waiting to be invited in. It's floral, yes, but the balance is shattered. Like someone took a decent lotus blend and drowned it in fennel and clove. Tepi finally speaks. This, he says coldly, was prepared for the royal nose. You blink, but it's unacceptable, he finishes. A child's tantrum in scent form. Turns out the court official arrived early this morning to request a sample for the crown prince's spring robe, a fabric meant to be perfumed gently, just enough to leave a trace on the wind. What he received was an overpowering storm of spice and syrup. "This will not do," Tepi says, each word carved from stone. "You'll prepare a replacement. By nightfall." You freeze, me. Denise gives a slow nod. You are officially terrified. You're not just being asked to make a blend, you're being asked to replace a failed blend. And not just for anyone, for the nose herself. You return to your bench. Your mind races. What do you know about royal scent preferences? Blue lotus is standard, of course. Subtle honey notes, yes. Frankincense in trace amounts. And above all, nothing heavy. Nothing loud. A blend that whispers. That speaks when spoken to. You begin. Base ostrich fat, the most neutral, the most patient. You warm it slowly over soft flame, stirring until it ripples like moonlit water. Next, dried rose petals finely crushed. They bring a faint sweetness lighter than lotus, less sugary than date. Then a single drop of cedarwood aged. Earthy. It grounds the scent. For balance, you add hibiscus oil distilled in clay pots and aged under sunstone, barely enough to notice, but it rounds the top note. And finally, 1 breath of cardamom. Just 1. Enough to lift the blend, not weigh it. You stir. Test it on a linen swatch. Inhale. It smells like stillness. Like air warmed by silk curtains. Like someone passed you in the garden and left a trace of memory behind. You cork it. Seal it. Mark it with your bronze bird. It's sent immediately. And then you wait. Tepi says nothing. Denise goes back to grinding resin. The boy stokes the fire again, pretending nothing happened. You wait. Until dusk. A messenger arrives just as the sun dips behind the palms. He's short, sweaty, clearly terrified, but he smiles. She said it was correct. He bows low. She said it lingered like a promise. You exhale for what feels like the first time in hours. Later that night, Teppy joins you in the courtyard. He hands you a tiny papyrus scroll, your first commissioned blend recipe now added to the compound archives. It bears your seal, your proportions, your name. She'll remember you now, Teppy says. You glance at him. Who you ask? He smiles faintly. The nose. And the gods, if they're listening. You sit in the garden until it's too dark to see. A gentle breeze brushes your face. You close your eyes. The scent of hibiscus and rose lingers on your robe, subtle and true. You realize something. You're no longer just learning how to make perfume. You're learning how to be heard quietly. There's a saying in the compound spoken half seriously, half lovingly. Market day is where scents go to be humbled. You learn this truth with your entire soul. Because today you're not in the temple, or the rendering room, or the sacred stillness of scrolls and fat. Today you're on a wooden cart bouncing violently toward the open-air market of Memphis, with 20 scent cones melting slowly in the sun, and a stubborn donkey named Heru, who only walks if sung to. Denise claps you on the back as you reach the city gates. You've made royal blends, she says. Time to see if a goat farmer will pay for one. You laugh. She doesn't. The market hits you like a perfume bottle flung from a rooftop. It's loud. It's hot. It smells like cooked onions, sweat, pressed figs, camel leather, and dreams deferred. The clamor of people shouting, animals braying and haggling, punctuated by the occasional musical scale from a nearby flute. You set up your little stall between a man selling fried locusts and a woman grinding lapis lazuli into blue eyeshadow. Across the aisle, a boy juggles eels for money. You start to regret everything. But you arrange your cones anyway, small pyramid-shaped waxy blends meant to be worn atop the head. As they melt in the sun, they release fragrance slowly, ideally making your scalp smell more divine than sweaty linen. Your offerings: morning bloom hibiscus mint rose, temple dust myrrh, cedar lotus, ostrich gold. Your personal blend with aged ostrich fat and orange blossom, the whisperer. Jasmine frankincense and a trace of musk. A woman stops, sniffs, wrinkles her nose. Too sweet, she says. A child snatches one and runs. You lose him near a date stall. An old man tastes a sample. Tastes. You weren't aware these were edible. You begin to panic. Then a priest in saffron robes approaches. He says nothing, just stands in front of the stall and breathes. He picks up temple dust, inhales deeply, nods. 2 for the shrine of Bastet, he says, and 1 for my wife's hair. He pays in silver. The day turns. A musician buys morning bloom and says it smells like a song he hasn't written yet. A merchant from the river docks samples ostrich gold and immediately asks if you can infuse it into his sandal straps. By midday, you've sold half your stock. By dusk, you're out. You ride home on Heru humming the eel juggler's tune. Your robes smell like 15 different things, and you've earned your first personal coin. It feels oddly heavy in your hand. Back at the compound, Teppy asks only one question: which sold best? You say temple dust. He nods, always does. But Denise grins and whispers, they'll ask for ostrich gold next week. You'll see. That night, you try wearing your own scent cone to bed. It melts, slowly releasing faint notes of citrus and old earth, a trace of lotus, and something harder to place. You fall asleep easily. And in your dream, you're walking through a market that never ends. Each stall holds a memory. Each scent opens a door, and no one runs away this time. There are many things that can go wrong in a scent workshop. Spilled oil, burnt resin, a batch of lotus petals infested with beetles, a dropped jar of aged civet musk, which will haunt a room for weeks, no matter how many prayers are whispered or fans are waved. But nothing, and this is unanimous, nothing compares to a spoiled batch of ostrich fat. It starts with a smell. A sharp, sour tang, like rotting almonds left too long in the sun. Then it thickens. The fat, once smooth and yielding, turns tacky, stringy. It refuses to melt evenly, separating like a stubborn argument mid-conversation. And worst of all, it infects everything it touches. You discover this one unfortunate morning when Teppy calls you into the inner rendering room. No words, just a gesture. The smell hits you halfway through the doorway. Your nose recoils.
Oh, gods.
Don't say their names, Teppy mutters grimly. They might take it personally. You glance at the basin. The fat inside has congealed into a lumpy mass. Patches of it are greenish. Someone has already tried to stir it. The spatula now sticks out at an unnatural angle like a grave marker. What happened? Denise joins you, eyes narrowed. New shipment from the northern hunters. No cooling wax. They packed it in damp clay. You wince. That's scent-making 101. Ostrich fat must be transported sealed dried and kept cool, or it turns faster than fresh figs in a bread oven. We need replacements, Teppy growls. Now. But there's no new shipment scheduled for 2 weeks. That's when panic sets in. Suddenly, the compound feels like a beehive after someone kicked the hive and ran. Apprentices run back and forth. Old jars are reopened and tested. Every single amphora of stored ostrich fat is uncorked, sniffed, and labeled safe, suspicious, or traitor. You're assigned to inventory the suspicious group. This means sitting with 20 jars of questionable fat and deciding whether they can be saved. The process is agonizing. You melt each one slowly, watch for clouding sniff at various temperatures. Some pass, some do not. One turns to foam. One smells like boiled radish. One is so foul that Denise gags and leaves the room. In the middle of this chaos, a scroll arrives. A high priest has requested a scent blend for an upcoming solar rebirth ceremony, an event attended by nobles, scribes, and a dozen statues of Ra himself. The blend must be perfect, and the base must be ostrich fat. Teppy pinches the bridge of his nose. Tell them we're refining. You work into the night. Eventually, you find a small amphora forgotten behind a stack of sandalwood logs. Its seal is intact. You crack it open slowly, reverently. It's perfect. The fat is smooth, unspoiled. Aged 6 weeks, rich in body, but nearly scentless. You want to weep. You don't. You do, however, quietly name the jar, the survivor, and give it its own shelf. You use this fat to prepare the solar ceremony blend. The recipe is ancient. Ostrich fat sunbound, crushed marjoram, wild honey, 1 drop of frankincense oil, orange peel sun-dried and powdered, a touch of desert wind, metaphorical or otherwise. You stir it slowly, watching the shimmer return. The scent rises like warmth through linen. Sweet, bright, reverent. Denise smells it and just says yes. Teppy writes your name on the scroll. No commentary, just your name. That alone means everything. The crisis begins to ease. The spoiled jars are sealed and buried quite literally in a trench beyond the herb garden, where they will return to the earth and hopefully not curse the soil. You and the other apprentices burn incense over the site just in case. The priest leading the burial mutters something about restoring balance to the nose. Later, over dinner, someone jokes. At least it wasn't crocodile fat. That turns evil. You all laugh, nervously. That night, you sit alone, inhaling the faintest trace of the solar blend drying on your sleeve. You learned something today. Fat doesn't just carry scent. It holds trust. And when that trust breaks, when the base fails, it doesn't matter how beautiful the oils are. They can't sing without something stable beneath them. You drift off thinking of the survivor jar, of lost blends, of ruined batches and rare saves, and of the quiet alchemy between fire patience and the perfect fat. The moon is high when you sneak into the scribe school. Not because you've become a criminal, but because Denise said half-muttered over dinner. If you want to understand scent, you have to understand the words people used for it before words made sense. She gave you directions to the Per Ankh, the House of Life, where scribes train in reading, recording, and reciting. Most are born into it. You are not. Which is why you're currently sliding past a sleeping cat, ducking behind a statue of Thoth, and hoping no one sees you before you reach the fragrant scroll archives. The school smells like ink and old papyrus. You inhale it deeply resinous dry, with the faintest note of oil-sealed wisdom. The archive is dim. A single oil lamp flickers. Scrolls are stacked by topic age, and charmingly by how many insects have tried to eat them. You find the section marked with a feather glyph, and an incense stick, perfumery and sensory rites. Your fingers tremble as you open the first scroll. It's a list, not a recipe, but a catalog of metaphors. Scent of moonskin after sorrow, breath of the lake when no one watches, resin of silence. You stare, mouth slightly open. These weren't instructions. These were incantations. Descriptions made to evoke, not define. Meant for noses trained not just in mixtures but in memory. Another scroll reveals something even stranger. A short play written for apprentices to recite when testing a new blend. Each line is a question. What does it smell like? A mother brushing hair. What does it not smell like? A lie with honey on it. Is it true? It made a scribe cry. That is enough. You pause and laugh. It's ridiculous and wonderful. You copy down what you can. As you turn to leave, a voice interrupts the quiet. You're not a student here. You freeze. The speaker is young, maybe your age. A scribe in training. He holds a reed pen like it's part of his hand. You prepare to stammer out an apology, but he raises an eyebrow. What are you looking for? You hesitate, then answer honestly. Words for what scent means, not just what it is. He studies you, then gestures. Follow me. He leads you past the scroll rooms up a spiral ramp to a small chamber with low windows and a table strewn with unfinished poems. This is where we write what we can't explain, he says. He pulls out a scroll half filled with short verses. Most begin with smells like. One reads smells like sandals warmed by sun and secrets. Another smells like someone remembering they left something burning. You sit together for hours. You share your blend notes. He shares verses. You describe Rezahet, the morning scent. He nods, writes, smells like a name said only once. You talk about ostrich fat, how it carries scent without fighting it. He murmurs, smells like nothing until you lean in close enough to weep. Before you leave, he hands you a reed pen and a blank scrap. Write your own. You hesitate, then scribble smells like waiting to be known. He reads it, smiles. You return to the compound before sunrise, scroll fragments in your pocket, ink stains on your robe, and a feeling like your nose has learned a new language. Later that day, Tepi asks what you did last night. You think he's going to scold you. Instead, he hands you a blank scroll. Start your scent ledger, he says. Your own. Do I list ingredients? If you want, he says. But better to start with the feeling. So you do. Your first entry, Ostrich Gold. Smells like a road only walked once barefoot. It's not science. It's not quite poetry. But it's the truth. The room is warm, almost too warm, and smells faintly of sandals and sandalwood. You've been called to the upper compound where the scent masters keep their records of royal preferences. Not just blends used in ceremonies, but the personal olfactory quirks of Egypt's elite. You're surprised to find the air here doesn't smell luxurious. It smells oddly practical, like well-organized linen. Tepi hands you a thin tablet inscribed with symbols. Your assignment, he says, is to recreate a blend once favored by Ramses the Younger. You blink. There were 4 Ramseses who called themselves the Younger. He shrugs. This one liked his sandals perfumed. Of course he did. You're handed an inventory of notes from previous mixers. It's equal parts recipe and gossip. Favored warm blends over floral. Requested a scent that hides sweat, but whispers gold. Once rejected a batch for being too loyal to lemons. Demanded scent remains stable under heat foot pressure and prayer. You stifle a grin. The original blend, Tiekenet Ka, is no longer in production. Some ingredients are extinct or prohibitively expensive. Others are still around, but temperamental, like labdanum, a sticky resin that changes behavior depending on humidity and moon cycles or so. Denit insists. You begin by gathering what you can replicate. Aged ostrich fat rendered with natron, cedarwood oil for depth, frankincense for its sacred quality, sandalwood scraping sun-dried, bitter orange zest dried under muslin, crushed flax ash once used to stabilize scent in leather. You test multiple versions. One is too sharp, citrus-heavy, it punches the nose. Another is too solemn. It smells like a funeral procession trying not to weep. Then you find the balance. The ostrich fat, aged 6 weeks, melts to the exact texture of cream. You add cedarwood first, allowing it to ground the blend. Frankincense comes next, 2 drops no more. Sandalwood softens the base, while the orange zest brightens the middle without overpowering. The flax ash gives it body. Something smoky, subtle human. You call Denit over. She breathes in. Her eyes close. That sweat turned regal. Tepi appears. He takes the blend without comment, dabs a tiny amount onto a strip of fine linen, and places it beneath a bronze sandal. Now what we wait. A day passes, then another. You nearly forget about it until a royal courier arrives silent as a shadow. He hands you a scroll, in elegant script sealed in purple wax. The blend is approved. The sandal shall now speak before the wearer does. You're too stunned to reply. Denise cackles. Well, your footnote made history. You spend the rest of the evening bottling Chekinet Ka Reborn in tiny alabaster vials, each stamped with your bird seal. The recipe is entered into the scroll records under your name. You're told it will be used not just for sandals, but possibly woven into royal linens, priestly sleeves, or temple fans. That night, you sit with your feet bare in the workshop garden. You smear the smallest dab of the blend behind your ear, curious. And as the warm wind brushes your skin, you swear your body no longer smells like a body. It smells like someone worthy of being remembered. You close your eyes, not to sleep, but just to savor. Because this time, the scent is not for a ceremony. It's for you. If the walls of Luxor could talk, they'd probably sigh dramatically and start gossiping. Because today, the compound is buzzing not with scrolls or spoiled fat or sandal recipes, but with romance. Word has it that one of the high priests has been spotted twice in the lotus vendor's stall, lingering too long, accepting samples he clearly can't afford, and once allegedly smiling. Which wouldn't be unusual, except that high priests don't smile. Not in public. Not unless a statue's fallen over and no one's been crushed. You're not one to meddle. Normally. But Denise, uncharacteristically chatty, nudges you during resin prep and says, "Did you know they made a shared scent?" You blink, like for both of them. She nods. It's called Sekem Seti, means power meets fragrance. She pauses. Also sounds like a joke, but it's not. The blend, as she describes it, is unusual, meant to be worn by both partners, but reacting differently to each person's skin. One blend, two expressions. You're hooked. She grins at your obvious interest and tosses you a scroll. Here, find the formula and see what they were hiding. You dive in. The scroll is only half a recipe. The rest is coded small hieroglyphs for measurements lines, drawn with no context. And one dramatic note must be steeped together, not side by side, not apart. Together. You test combinations. The base ostrich fat. Of course. Soft, receptive neutral. Then lotus. Not blue, but white for clarity. Crushed bay leaf for sharpness. A twist of cinnamon bark sun-dried until it curls like secrets. And then the final touch fig resin. You hesitate. Fig is tricky. Too much, and it turns sour. Too little, and it vanishes. But in the right quantity, it gives a sweetness that feels alive. You blend two small batches. One with the resin added at the beginning. One with it added at the end. You and Denise each test a version on your inner wrists. The same formula, but the result is wildly different. On her, it's bright, green, electric. The bay leaf leads, followed by the fig like a mischievous smile. On you, it's low, rich. The cinnamon blooms. The fig comes late, soft, nostalgic, like a memory stirring at the edge of breath. You stare at each other, then both nod. This is no accident. The blend was meant to shift, to speak differently through different people. Later, you present it to Tepi. He says nothing. Then, with maddening slowness, he takes a scrap of linen dabs. Each version smells both and mutters, "Love smells different to everyone." He assigns you to prepare 6 jars. You make 8. 2, you keep one labeled "mine," the other "not mine yet." Word spreads. People begin requesting mirrored blends fragrances that shift that echo, that carry a whisper of someone else. A guard asks for one to match his sister's wedding gift. A potter wants one to honor his late father's favorite herb garden. One woman brings you her husband's old robe and says, "Make it smell like him when he was kind." You do your best. And slowly your station becomes known as the corner where memories wear perfume. That night you dab Sekem Seti on your temple before bed, and dream of 2 figures walking parallel close but not touching, carrying the same scent, and yet completely their own. The door to the women's courtyard is smaller than you expect. Not grand, not gilded. Just a simple wooden frame draped in linen, the edges frayed from years of sun. You hesitate before entering. This space, the Garden of Henna, isn't off limits technically, but few apprentices venture here without invitation. You were invited. A folded note tucked beside your jar of labdanum this morning. Come to the garden. Bring nothing but your nose. No name. But the handwriting was Denise's. You duck through the doorway and step into a different world. It's shaded. Cool. not quiet. There's laughter rustling fabrics, the soft splash of water. But the energy is different. Not sacred like the temple, or tense like the blending room. This is a place of intimacy. Women of every rank gather here, priestesses, perfumers, even a few noble daughters with sandal straps undone and fig juice on their lips. They lounge under the shade of tall palms, soaking henna petals in warm bowls, grinding seeds, braiding each other's hair, exchanging secrets and scent in equal measure. Denate waves you over to a low bench. Sit. Breathe. You obey. The air smells alive. There's the sharp green of fresh henna leaves muddled with the earthy bitterness of their crushed roots. Someone nearby is steeping orange blossom in clay pots. A faint trail of rose oil drifts from a folded scarf. Somewhere, someone's smoking dried jasmine leaves in a clay pipe. Denate offers you a cup of something cold and dark. Black hibiscus tea. Keeps the nose sharp. You sip. And then you notice them 3 women huddled in the corner, whispering over a scroll and a cluster of small alabaster pots. Each pot is open. Inside, scent blends. But different from what you've made. These aren't for gods or royals or mourning. They're for themselves. One woman explains, "This one makes me feel taller." Another, "This one tastes like when I used to steal dates." The third, laughing, "I wear this when I lie well." You blink. You blend for feeling. They shrug. "Why not you blend for the dead? We blend for who we almost are." Denate slides a bowl of henna powder toward you. Try. You look at the pile of dried petals, the bowl of steeped cloves, the tiny pot of rose sap, and you begin. You don't measure. You guess. You choose ostrich fat for the base naturally, but you soften it with macerated henna oil and 1 drop of bitter almond. Then fig milk, then crushed basil stem, harsh peppery, too much on its own, but fascinating in tension with the rest. You test it. It smells confusing. Denate grins. Perfect. You name it, uncertain before noon. The other women laugh. One trades you a vial of regret at twilight in exchange. Another dabs your blend on her neck and sighs. "I feel like I could lie with better posture." You spend the rest of the afternoon experimenting, not with rules, with intuition, with questions like, what does confidence smell like before it's earned? Can shame smell beautiful? What does forgiveness wear to dinner? You leave with 3 new blends and a head full of strange poetry. Back at the compound, Tepi says nothing about your absence. But the next morning you find a new jar on your bench marked only with a feather glyph, and the word, "Not all lessons require fire." You smile. Later, while grinding basil root for a formal temple blend, you secretly add 1 drop of uncertain before noon. The mixture doesn't rebel. It blooms. And suddenly the gods smell a little more like you. You're kneeling beside a small clay statue of Bastet when Denate taps you on the shoulder and whispers, "Cat tomb duty." You blink. That's real. She nods, completely serious. And today's your turn. You've rendered fat for nobles, blended oil for royalty. Even rebuilt ancient recipes from crumbling scrolls. But no one ever warned you that one day you'd be asked to prepare scented offerings for cats. Not living ones. Entombed ones. The temple of Bastet receives hundreds of feline remains each year, some mummified in silk, some wrapped in linen scraps, others carefully placed in reed boxes alongside carved mice or dried fish. Wealthy families commission these burials as blessings or thanks. Some believe their cat was the reincarnation of a poet, or a priest, or a perfectly aloof grandmother. The burial offerings include standard items, milk amulets, a small bowl of dried herbs, but one item is sacred, the perfume. Cats, Denate explains, are very picky in the afterlife. You're escorted to the preparation chamber behind the Temple of Bastet. It's dim, low-ceilinged, and lined with clay jars and soft bells that chime when the wind shifts. The head caretaker, a woman named Kimi, instructs you. Each cat gets its own blend, just a dab on the linen wrap, enough to sweeten the soul, not overwhelm it. You ask for the historical recipe. She shakes her head. There isn't one. We listen. Each cat tells us. You stare at the rows of feline remains, all eerily peaceful in their tiny wrappings. You kneel beside the first one, a small bundle with tufts of white fur still visible. Kame says she was called T-Mew. You begin with ostrich fat, of course. You melt it gently, then consider what scent fits. Taimu, from the way she's curled, seems soft. Curious. You try a blend of lavender myrrh and a touch of mint oil. Keem smells it. Too bright, she says. You adjust. Swap mint for a wisp of sweet fennel and the barest hint of sandalwood ash. She nods. The scent is mellow comforting. It smells like a sunbeam over a cushion. You dab it onto the wrap, whisper Timu's name, and seal the linen. One down. You move on to the next, a larger cat with worn ears and deep-set eyes, even in death. The scent you choose for him includes cedar oil, crushed marigold, and a fleck of fig syrup. It's smoky and regal, like a cat who watched 3 dynasties rise and had opinions about each. You lose track of time. Every blend is different. One smells like dust and hibiscus. One like fresh linen and thyme. One for a kitten barely wrapped smells of milk henna and a single drop of rosewater. When you finish, Kimi pats your shoulder. You listen well, she says. You return to the compound just before sunset, your sleeves scented with dozens of soft feline ghosts. Tepi doesn't ask where you've been. But later, you find a scroll on your bench titled On Scents for Small Souls. In it, someone has copied one of your feline blends verbatim, ending with the line, "Smells like a purr you can't unhear." That night, you light a single cone of Taimu's blend in your room. As the scent curls around you, warm, soft, faintly floral, you find yourself thinking not of gods or kings, but of quiet companions. The ones who follow us even beyond the veil. You fall asleep to the faintest whisper of a bell. And in your dream, a cat with eyes like starlight curls beside your pillow and says quite plainly, "You chose well." You wake to a summons scratched into the soot on your workshop wall. Prepare the blend for Ra's breath. Tay. You stare at it groggy, unsure if it's a joke, a prophecy, or both. But it's real. The divine blend. It's whispered about in the compound, with the same caution others use when discussing spirits or recipes that once made a scribe faint. Supposedly, it was first crafted during the reign of Djoser, and has only been recreated 3 times in living memory. Each time for a pharaoh's crowning. Each time requiring a scent base that mimics the breath of Ra at sunrise. Whatever that smells like. You report to the high blending room where the walls are washed in white chalk, and no apprentices are allowed to speak above a whisper. Tepi is already there, surrounded by sealed jars, scrolls, and a bowl of water, so still, it looks like polished obsidian. Denit hands you a small scroll. You expect a recipe. Instead, it reads, "A base of silence, a heart of light, a breath that does not belong to you." You stare. That's it, you ask. Tepi adds, "The blend must not smell like sunrise. It must be it. Helpful." You begin by meditating beside the fire. Seriously. Tepi insists on it. You sit. You breathe. You listen to the whisper of heat rising off hot stones. You remember the smell of dawn. On your first day, the river reeds, the pale light, the dry clay underfoot. You begin to build the base. Ostrich fat, of course. Aged 7 weeks, double rendered. It carries scent so gently it feels like holding breath in the palm of your hand. To this you add 2 drops of marjoram oil sun-steeped, a flake of gold leaf melted into a honey tincture, saffron threads crushed into a warm paste, citrus zest only from fruit ripened before noon, a single petal of red hibiscus dried under temple bells. You stir slowly, the scent rising in soft spirals. It begins to shift. First, it smells like brightness, the moment between dark and light. Then it changes, deeper, fuller, like warmed stone and sky. Tepi inhales once, says nothing. You keep going. You seal the blend in an alabaster vial, wax it shut, mark it only with a sun glyph, and your bird seal. A week later, the high priest calls for it. You deliver the vial yourself. The temple of Ra is unlike any other. Gold inlaid walls, statues taller than oxen. You enter the inner sanctum barefoot. You kneel, hold the vial above your head, and say nothing. The priest takes it, uncorks it, and breathes. He closes his eyes, smiles, then says, "You brought the horizon with you." The blend is placed in the central brazier, and as it burns, the room fills with a scent so soft it almost escapes notice, but then returns again and again like a memory refusing to fade. That evening, back at the compound, Tepi gives you a small carved charm, a sun disk etched into olive wood. You don't ask what it means, but you wear it. That night, the wind smells different. Not stronger, not stranger, just right. And in your dreams, the sun rises without light, only scent, and you follow it barefoot into something vast. Festival season in Thebes is always a little unhinged. Even the gods seem to relax. Priests wear looser robes. The temple lions are fed twice. And somewhere, somehow, a lyre player is always singing off-key but with full chest. But the Festival of Smells, it's something else entirely. Held once every 3 years, it honors Nefertem, the god of perfume lotus, and according to at least one scribe, floral chaos. The compound is chosen to prepare the centerpiece blend, a scent to be burned atop the highest temple brazier at sunset. It must be rich, sacred, evocative, and above all, memorable. This is your first year being part of the prep team. You're thrilled, until things go wrong. It starts with an early morning delivery, a sealed jar marked with a royal glyph, and the feather symbol for sacred ingredients. You open it reverently, expecting lotus oil, myrrh, perhaps even ambergris. Instead, the scent that hits you is goat musk, unmistakable, aggressive. It crawls up your nose and sets up permanent residence. You gag. Denit, who arrives right as you slam the lid closed, raises an eyebrow and mutters, "May the gods have mercy." Somehow someone mixed goat musk into the sacred base. All 18 amphorae of it. Panic follows. The musk has tainted the ostrich fat. The scrolls have already been copied for the final blend. The priests expect the scent by sundown. And you're running out of time, clean jars, and sanity. Tepi, ever unflappable, declares simply, "Fix it." You and Denit brainstorm at rapid-fire pace. You can't remove the musk, but maybe, just maybe, you can bend it. Your plan, overwhelm the aggressor. Not by louder scent, but by smarter scent. You begin. New fat rendered fresh. Neutral crisp. You grind a concentrated lotus paste mixed with frankincense resin soaked in wine and powdered juniper sharp enough to cut through fog. Then a hint of blue camphor just to give the whole thing lift. You mix it. Stir it. Pray over it. Test it. The result is strange. Not bad, not good. Complex. It begins with lotus folds into sharp, citrus bitter wood, and ends on a note that's earthy and unknowable. You can still detect the goat musk if you want to. But now it's less like a shout and more like a weird uncle who sits quietly in the corner during family dinners. Present, yes, but no longer ruining everything. You name the blend Shadow Petal. At sunset, you deliver it yourself to the temple of Nefertem. The priests light it in the upper brazier. The scent billows rising into the orange sky caught by the wind. People fall silent. And then the applause begins, not clapping, but foot stomps and ululating. Someone throws rose petals. A child screams with joy. Even the off-key lyre player stops mid-verse, stunned. You smile. Later, Tepi finds you on the roof of the compound watching the smoke trail fade. He says goat musk. You groan. Please don't remind me. He grins. You'll be telling that story for years. You don't doubt it. Before bed, you dab the faintest trace of shadow petal behind your ear, and you realize something. It smells like survival. Like when everything breaks, but something beautiful still rises. You dream of smoke curling upward, stubborn and strange, dancing between stars, and somewhere far below, a goat smirks. You're scrubbing your mixing basin carefully, methodically, the way Tepi taught you, when he steps into the room with something you've never seen him hold. A smile. He doesn't say anything, just sets down a small jar. It's beeswax sealed, marked with your bronze bird seal. The date etched into it. Your first blend. You stare at it. You'd forgotten. It was simple. Half-rendered ostrich fat, blue lotus, and hibiscus rind. It had gone unnoticed, unremarked upon, quietly aged in the corner. But now Tepi hands it to you like it's sacred. "You've earned your own shelf," he says. It doesn't feel real. But he gestures and you walk barefoot to the long wall at the back of the workshop. Denit stands waiting, holding a clean alabaster tile freshly inscribed. Your name. Your seal. Your scent mark. You place your jar beside it. The others, the names you once whispered in awe, are now your neighbors. That night, a small ceremony is held. Not loud, not formal. Just you, Denit, Tepi, the apprentices, and a brazier in the center of the compound garden. You've prepared a final blend, your blend for the occasion. No scroll, no commission. Just the scent that best represents what this journey has meant. You call it breath returned. Its ingredients. Ostrich fat from the survivor jar. Crushed basil for beginnings. Rose sap for patience. Henna leaf for the garden. Saffron oil for the day you dared more. A drop of goat musk. Yes, really, because not all mistakes are meant to be erased. You light it. The scent rises. It smells like everything and nothing. Like mornings beside the Nile. Like linen robes soaked in effort. like resin ground by hands that never stopped shaking but kept stirring anyway. Everyone breathes in, and the silence that follows is full. Later, Teppy places a scroll in your hands. Inside the master list of commissions past and pending. You'll choose which one we accept next, he says. You blink. Me. You are scent master now, Denise says. And we're tired. Laughter. Real belly-deep, joy-worn laughter. You stay behind when everyone else returns inside. The night is soft. The breeze smells of mint and old stories. You dab one last trace of breath returned onto your wrist. You close your eyes and listen. To everything that fat has carried. To every name whispered into resin. To every hour you stood barefoot over heat and memory and dared to say, "This is mine." You fall asleep in the garden. And in your dream, you are no longer following scent. You are the scent, carried on the wind, remembered, always. You lie still now, the night wrapped around you like linen, warm and weightless. The air is soft, familiar, and just scented enough traces of myrrh, maybe lotus, or something older still. The garden is quiet. The fire has cooled. Somewhere in the distance, a jar is being sealed with beeswax, not for royalty, not for gods, but just for you. You've walked long corridors of resin and dust, knelt beside cats and kings, stirred memory into fat, and let silence carry the rest. You've made mistakes. You've remade them into scent. You've waited for oils to bloom, and for teachers to speak, and eventually, you learn to trust your own hands. Inhale now. Let the breath stay a moment longer. Exhale slowly, as if your body is uncorking a story. There's no rush anymore. The scrolls are written. The jars are sealed. The sandals have been perfumed and worn well. The gods are patient tonight. Even Teppy has stopped watching just this once. Drift, like scent from a linen collar in morning sun. Float, like lotus petals steeping in a still bowl. Rest, as long as you need. The blend is finished. The dream continues.